Okay, so I'm going to talk about Somepack. The case name is Somepack. If you can beat them, join them. So, in a description of the case, and first made an introduction and talk about the Turkey company that is Somepack, and its labor is the injection molds for plastic products. Uh, for the cosmetic industry and in the next years from other industries. So the case in the first place talk about a background and say that the enterprise is specializes in innovation, quality, and focus on their customer, and this is a natural characteristic of the management. So they also talk that the company became the largest manufacturer of plastic and metal cosmetic packaging in Turkey, and they start exporting to the Americas, Asia, Europe, North Africa, Middle East, and Soviet Republic. Also, the company obtained the ISO 1901 certification after the generations became well educated and helped to the progress of the enterprise. They also talk about the new competition and how the war of low price affect the development of the company. Also, they talk about automatic assembly and cheaper parts. So they start buying parts cheaper from other countries and raw materials from other countries, but that wasn't a good idea because they start to have problems with that. But further, we are going to talk about that. They also talk about a cheaper enterprise resource planning software, like information system, but it didn't get so well also, so they start changing and buy a cheaper software that work better. Um, Also, the case talk about cheaper machines. That it was the same that happened with the cheaper raw materials that they use. Also, the case talk about low quality materials. That is the case of sand, a very low cost plastic material. Talk about outsourcing and how they have to outsource some of the parts of, for example, the molds that came from China and other kinds of things, because they need to get a lower cost, production cost. And in the final part of the case, we find the conclusion. So in the conclusion, the different manager of different areas talk, and also CEO give their perspective and their opinion about the case and all the problems that the company have. So that's a brief description of what we read on the case. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the problematics that we found on the case. So the main problematic that the CEO mentioned in the case is how they are going to restart the balance, and it will take years, so they have to survive at the meantime. And the CEO means survive because they have a lot of issues, like the first one was faced on the war of low cost competition from Chinese manufacturers. Also, the competition based on price. So, companies start to look for suppliers that sell at very low price, but they couldn't afford that kind of reduce. So they need to look for different strategies that help them to increase their production, but and quality without increasing their cost. So it was a difficult problematic. Also, the labor cost difference, because in Turkey the labor cost wasn't so cheaper like in China or India. So there was another problematic that the company have to face. Another hand, in the part of cheaper enterprise resource planning software, they have a lot of issues because the software was uh, not too difficult to use, but the information wasn't so clear and it was a messy software. So the main issue of the software was with accounting and finances because due to the payment of bonus and from the salesman or woman, and also another issue with the information system was the inventory because it didn't update at real time, so they order more than they need or they send without ending inventory, so they have a lot of issues with that. uh, okay, and in the final page we have the last two very important problems that we find on the case. So the first one is that Somepack start to use sand. Sand is a very low cost plastic material, so a lot of companies have to return their inventory because they found mistakes on the products. And that's because they want to again to fight from the low cost but with bad and cheap materials that also became with big consequence to the company. And in the part of outsourcing, one of the main problematic also is that supply in Turkey were essential and difficult to replace. So they have very specific suppliers that they need, but if that suppliers, for example, broke or changed their economic activity, the company need to look for another suppliers that can help them to produce their products. So it was another problematic because you can depend of only one supplier. So they have to look for another supply that it was better and had cheap prices and all that kind of things. So those are the problematics that we find on the case. And that's all.
For greater production, the automation process portion a machine that assembles the packing of lipsticks, which will replace 10 workers expected. While this brought a series of problems become in its application. The company invested in a ERP software which solved to project demand and thus has to resource to cover it. Although it had its problem, its complementation uh, by by language and traffic information. Other strategy was the diversification of lines. To meet the demand, the various product lines bought low-cost machinery, which was sometimes cheaper to replace all the machinery to send it for repair. In the same line, the company implement lower quality of inputs to respond to the competition who use it and can to have a lower cost for a product. The company uses low quality materials which are cheaper than the other ones, and customers were willing to to accept lower quality if they can have a better price. The last one strategy was the outsourcing. To reduce the cost, the company saw as a strategy buy some parts from China and other parts of the world to to the packings of the cosmetic, and they have always present that they only can import or or outsourcing do outsourcing with some parts of the product, not with all the products, because if they do that, they convert in a marketer than a producer. And the company is a producer, no a marketer. By keeping the quality to maintain the trade and regular customers. For that, we suggest first, horizontal integration with the Chinese competitor. By one of the companies will reduce the customer's change product risk
will keep the development of the firm onto the continent and will reduce the cost of the development and delivery to the Asian customers. But the company should take advantage of their know-how to improve the quality of the Asian producers and maintain the low cost with a scale economy. Second, in order to complete the last point, the company should develop a world production chain around a different continent in which they have presence. They will develop a better economy scale with more efficient delivery and production of the product, keep a better and strongest contact with the regional clients. With this, the company could supply all the clients with a better quality and the regional market specifications in a shorter time, but without distributing the know-how of the company by the outsourcing process. They could keep the control of every part of the production by the manager that the company accept and contract by themselves. Third, as the case show, the company should innovate and develop new market and new product lines to delivery and to diversify the risks, production and costs, take advantage of the machinery they bought, and have a better manage of the company resources that will reduce the production cost structure. Fourth, in order to continue with the three last points, the company should take advantage of the good relation with the clients and work with them to develop a new better product by the technological development of them and satisfy the customer needs. With the new products and new technology development, the company could obtain patents of that products to have them safe from competitors. Fifth, develop as subsidiaries in other countries, like Colombia, will take advantage of the new trade agreement and reduce export and import costs for the company. Sixth, to keep the confidence and the relation with the clients, the company should have to keep a permanent stock of production to delivery as soon as a regular client asks for it. And seven, the company should contract the professional and expert suppliers of technology and software to avoid the problems that they had in the past. That could be more expensive but will reduce costs in the future and save the investment. Thank you.